I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. Me, Jake, married to Emily for just over a year now, or at least I thought I was. We met in college, fell hard, and everything seemed perfect until it was. At first it was little things. She'd be tense when I'd ask about her day, avoid my touch, cancel plans last minute without a real explanation. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just stressed or busy with work. But then came the weird stuff, her phone lighting up at odd hours, her suddenly needing me time more often than not, and her getting defensive whenever I asked if something was wrong. One day, I noticed she'd started wearing a different perfume when she came back from her girls' nights, and her phone was often on silent with the screen hidden from me. I didn't want to be that guy who goes through her stuff, but curiosity got the best of me. I saw a message pop up from someone named Chris, a name that immediately rang a bell because I remembered Emily mentioning a childhood friend from her hometown, but she'd always brushed it off as just a platonic friendship. The message was flirty, a little too much for just friends. It said something like, "Can't wait to see you tonight, it's been too long," with a little heart emoji. My stomach clenched. This was not what I signed up for. That was the moment I started digging. I stayed up one night, sneaking around her phone when she was asleep. I found more texts, more than I wanted to see. They met up several times in secret, always just to catch up, but the tone of those messages, it was obvious they'd been crossing boundaries. I found a recent picture of her, taken in a hotel room, apparently during one of these secret meetups. She was lying there, half-dressed, with a goofy grin on her face. My head spun. I felt like I was betrayed all over again, but this time it was real. She'd been lying about everything: her pregnancy, her never seeing him anymore, her busy work schedule. All lies. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at that photo, feeling like I'd been slapped in the face with a 2x4. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this after everything we'd been through? All those promises, all those future plans. I thought we were solid. Turns out she'd been cheating on me with her childhood friend Chris from the moment we got engaged. I felt numb, a mix of betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't know how. That's when I started planning my next move. I needed answers, and I needed to know how deep this thing really went. The morning after I found the messages, I couldn't look at Emily the same way. She was still sleeping, her chest rising and falling calmly, so innocent, so unaware of what I knew. I sat there, staring at her face, feeling everything inside me twist into a knot. How long had she been lying? Was I just some placeholder all this time while she was sneaking around with Chris? It felt like my world was crumbling and I couldn't breathe. The rage was building, but underneath that, there was this crushing sadness. Because I still loved her, at least I thought I did. I knew I couldn't just confront her right. Then, I needed a plan, something calculated and cold, not just some emotional outburst, so I waited. I watched her move around the apartment, trying to act normal, like everything was fine. She was brushing her teeth, humming some stupid tune, acting like she hadn't just cheated on me for months. That made me more furious. How could she be so bitchy, so condescending, acting like everything was fine, like I was the crazy one? When she finally woke up, I was already sitting on the couch, arms crossed, trying to keep my face unreadable. She looked at me with her usual sharp glare, like she thought she was better than everyone else. I could tell she was already starting to get defensive before I even said a word. "Morning," she said, her voice kinda snippy. "You look like you didn't sleep." I took a deep breath. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but cold. "And I mean now." Her eyes flickered with a hint of annoyance, but she sighed and sat down across from me. That's when I laid it out, showed her the messages I'd found, the photo, everything I had uncovered. Her face twisted into this bitchy smirk, like she thought she could talk her way out of it. "Oh, come on, Jake," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not what you think, you're overreacting, that's nothing." "Nothing, nothing." That's when I snapped. I told her how long I'd been suspicious, how I'd caught her lying, how I knew she'd been sleeping with Chris for months. Her reaction, she got defensive, started flipping the script on me, accusing me of snooping, of not trusting her, of being paranoid. Yeah, right. Like I just magically found all this out for no reason. She kept saying it was just a mistake, that he was just a childhood friend, that nothing ever happened. typical bullshit. That's when I realized she was a master liar and she was ready to twist every word I said to make herself look innocent. I was furious. How dare she lie to my face like that? How dare she act like a victim? I knew from the start she wouldn't admit everything. She's always been bitchy about being caught, and she sure knew how to manipulate her way out of it. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I knew about the affair, about the secret meetings, about her lying about her pregnancy. She blinked, then laughed like I was joking. That's when I realized she'd been lying about the pregnancy too. I'd always thought she was pregnant and she'd used that as leverage to keep me tied to her, to make me feel guilty about leaving. But now, that was just another lie. Her face went cold. "You're crazy, Jake. I never cheated on you. You're just jealous, paranoid, and insecure." I could see her trying to act like everything was normal, like she hadn't just been caught cheating and lying her ass off. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. That's when I knew I had to get out, to find a way to end this. I couldn't stay with someone who lied so effortlessly, who played me for a fool. But I also knew I had to be smart about it. Because if she was capable of this kind of deception, I had to protect myself. Financially, emotionally, everything. I needed to plan my next steps carefully, even if it meant tearing everything apart too. Finally get free. After the initial shock and angry confrontation, I knew I couldn't just walk away without a plan. Emily's words were still echoing in my mind. Her denial, her bitchy smirk, her insistence that I was just insecure. Honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind trying to piece together what was real and what was a lie. But deep down, I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let her keep playing me for a fool. So I started digging even deeper. I went through her phone again, looking for anything I might have missed before. I found receipts from hotels, messages from Chris that she hadn't deleted, and even a recent order for a pregnancy test kit. She'd been lying about her pregnancy all along. Every piece of evidence pointed to her being unfaithful and manipulative. She'd also been hiding a lot of stuff from me, and I started to realize how much she'd lied about everything. Her feelings, her intentions, even her own identity as a wife. But I needed something more concrete, something that would make her realize I wasn't just some naive guy taking her word for everything. I decided to hire a private investigator. I didn't want to do this, but I couldn't keep living in this fog of lies. I needed proof of her affair, proof that I could use to confront her properly, maybe even take to a lawyer if it came to that. It took a couple of weeks, but eventually, the pie got me some photos and videos. Emily was sneaking out late at night to meet Chris, often staying over at his place. I saw her in bed with him in a hotel, sharing kisses. It wasn't just a fling, it was an affair with all the betrayal that entails. She told me she was pregnant, claimed she was carrying our child, and used that as a weapon to guilt-trip me into staying. But it was all a lie. She wasn't pregnant. She'd just been lying about that too, probably to keep me from leaving or to keep her affair hidden longer. By now, I was beyond angry. The betrayal ran so deep I felt like I was drowning. How could she do this to me? How could she lie about everything, from her pregnancy to her fidelity, without batting an eye? And her bitchy attitude, her constant manipulations, her accusations. That I was paranoid, it all made sense now. She'd been playing the victim since day one, acting like I was the bad guy, when in reality she was the one sneaking around. I felt utterly crushed, but also relieved. Now I knew the truth, and I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not anymore. That's when I started planning my exit. I arranged my finances, contacted a lawyer, and set a timeline. I wanted her to see I was serious. I also wanted to make sure she didn't try to manipulate me or drag me back into her web of lies. I was done being the fool. The hardest part was facing how much I still loved her, even after everything she did. But love doesn't make you blind to betrayal. It just makes you feel even more hurt when you realize it's all been a lie. I knew I had to walk away, no matter how much it hurt. The only way I could move on was to cut all ties, face the pain, and rebuild from the ground up. The day I decided to finally confront her with everything I had gathered, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. I knew this would be the moment she'd either admit everything or dig her heels in and deny. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of it this time. I sat her down in the living room, the evidence spread out in front of her on my laptop. Photos of her meeting Chris, the hotel receipts, the messages, the fake pregnancy test order, all laid bare. Her reaction? Oh, it was classic. She went from that bitchy smirk to a look of pure panic, then burst out laughing like I was some kind of joke. That was her defense: laughter, dismissal, and the same manipulative tone. "Wow, Jake, you really went full detective on this one," she sneered. "You're making a scene over some stupid photos. You're overreacting as usual." I wasn't having any of it. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I knew she'd been cheating, that she'd lied to me about her pregnancy, and that I had proof of her meeting Chris behind my back. Her face twitched. She looked angry and annoyed, but also scared, because she knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. She tried to gaslight me, saying I was crazy, that I'd misunderstood, that it was just a fling, a mistake. She even said I was paranoid because I didn't trust her. That was when I finally snapped. "Trust? You think I don't trust you because I found out you're cheating on me? No, Emily, I don't trust you because you've been lying about everything. About the pregnancy, about your meetings with Chris, about who you really are." I saw her eyes flicker with some sort of twisted anger, but I kept going. "You've been a bitch about everything, acting like I'm stupid, lying to my face, trying to manipulate me into staying. Well, guess what? It's over." She stood up then, her voice rising. "You're such a jealous, insecure loser, Jake. You always think everything's about you. I don't owe you explanations for my life." That was her typical bitchy attitude. Nothing's her fault, everything's someone else's problem, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I was leaving, that I was done with the lies, the cheating, the manipulation. I told her I knew she was lying about being pregnant, and that I had enough evidence to prove she was lying about everything. That was the turning point. Her face turned purple with rage and she spat back. "You're just jealous because I'm better than you. You're pathetic." But I felt nothing but emptiness. I'd had enough. I grabbed my keys, told her she could keep all her lies, and left the apartment for good. The house felt cold and empty the moment I walked out, like I was abandoning everything I'd built with her. Walking away was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the only thing I could do. I realized how much her bitchy attitude, her constant lies, her manipulations had poisoned everything. I knew I'd feel hurt and angry for a long time, but I also felt free. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe again. And honestly, that moment of walking out, knowing I was finally done with her, was both devastating and strangely liberating. It's amazing how fast life can change when you finally see the truth in its rawest form. After I left the apartment, everything hit me all at once. The betrayal, the lies, the fake pregnancy, all of it. I felt numb, like I was walking through some bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I stayed with a friend for a few days, just trying to process what had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that bitchy smirk, her dismissive attitude. I kept replaying everything, wondering how I could have been so blind for so long. The first few weeks were a roller coaster. I oscillated between anger and sadness. I was furious that she had used me, that she'd lied so effortlessly, that she'd played me for a fool. I kept asking myself, how could she be so bitchy, so manipulative? But then there was the part of me that mourned what we'd had, her smile, her touch, the plans we made. All gone, just like that. It was a gut punch, but deep down, I knew I had to move on. I finally decided to get a lawyer. I didn't want her to try to mess with my head or manipulate me into staying. I also wanted to make sure I protected myself financially. She'd been draining me emotionally for too long, and now that I knew the truth, I had to be smart. The lawyer helped me draft a separation agreement, and I filed for divorce. I told myself I wasn't doing this out of spite, but because I deserved better, a life without her lies and her bitchy attitude. Meanwhile, I stayed in touch with the private investigator. I wanted to make sure she didn't try to come back and spin some new lie or guilt trip me into changing my mind. Turns out, she was still meeting Chris, still lying about her pregnancy, still trying to manipulate her way out of the mess she created. The evidence was clear. She'd been a master at deception, but I was done being her puppet. One of the hardest parts was facing the aftermath, seeing mutual friends take sides, hearing her bitchy comments about how I was crazy or paranoid, and knowing she'd probably be spreading her false stories about me. It made me realize how much she loved playing the victim. But I also understood I had to stop caring about her opinion. I had to focus on healing, on rebuilding my life. Looking back, I see how much I learned from all this. Trust is everything, but it's also fragile. You can't just ignore the signs of trouble. Sometimes you need to face them head on. Emily was a master manipulator, but I was too blind to see it at first. Now I know better. Most importantly, I've learned that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living in a lie. I won't make that mistake again. I'm finally moving forward, and honestly, it's the best thing I could have done for myself. Now, months have passed since I walked out that door. It's been a brutal journey, but I can honestly say I'm finally starting to pick up the pieces of my life. The betrayal still stings, but it's a different kind of hurt now, more distant, more manageable. I've cut out the toxicity, the lies, the bitchy attitude she always threw around. I've learned a lot about trust, about reading between the lines, about spotting the warning signs of someone who's manipulative and selfish. I've also come to realize that sometimes the most important thing you can do is walk away. No matter how much you love someone, no matter how much you want things to work out, if they're lying and cheating and playing games, you're only hurting yourself by staying. That realization was what finally set me free. It's not easy, and I still get moments where I feel angry or sad, but they're easier to handle now. I'm learning to forgive myself for trusting her, even if I can't forgive her for what she did. I've started focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with friends I'd pushed aside, even trying to meet new people. I want to rebuild my confidence, my sense of worth, because this whole ordeal shook me to my core. But I refuse to let her define me. I know I deserved better from the start, and now I'm determined to find that happiness again on my own terms. Looking back, I realize how much I was blinded by love and hope. I ignored the red flags, made excuses for her bitchy attitude, convinced myself that she was just stressed or busy. But the truth was staring me right in the face all along. She was manipulative, dishonest, and selfish. I should have seen the signs earlier, but I was too caught up in the fantasy of what we could be. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust your gut. Don't ignore the warning signs. And if you find yourself in a situation where someone is lying, cheating, or playing games, don't be afraid to walk away. It's better to be alone than trapped in a lie. I wasted too much time believing in her, hoping she'd change, but the only person who can change your life is you. Now I'm finally doing that. Rebuilding, healing, and moving forward. It's not the ending I expected, but maybe it's the one I needed. And honestly, it feels good to finally be free.